Hello, hello. Welcome to Shift Happens again, the show where we talk with the people building, breaking, and rebuilding the systems behind the scenes at high growth startups. We love talking about fails and chaos because it's better than any school. I am your host, Kelly Berdine, and today we have Luke Van Valin. He is the VP of Sales at Ruh.ai, and he has such an interesting background coming from broadcast and real estate and now doing this SaaS game. So I think he's got a lot of interesting things to say about his journey. So let's go ahead and get in. Luke, how are you doing today? You just went through a big move. You're all settled, yeah?
Yep, all settled in. It's great to be here. First and foremost, thanks so much for having me on your show. And yeah, we've just moved. We live in Cherry Hills, Colorado, which is just a small area right south of Denver.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's talk about your path. You have started and or been involved in a lot of different businesses, and you noted some of which didn't take off, which is great. Again, that's how we learn. None of us, hit a winner the first time out of the gate. What did those early failures teach you that you still carry into Ruh today?
That's a fascinating question. And in fact, the majority of the projects which I started didn't really go anywhere. I have kind of a unique, or maybe not unique, but different sort of approach. Is like my early endeavors when my first failure was sort of in soccer, like as a kid. So I grew up playing soccer. I got really good. I was kind of regionally on one of the best teams, and I worked my way up from being just like a small town kid playing in the backyard to playing on a premier level team that was traveling to Seattle every weekend. And I kind of hit a wall in that. And this all kind of contributes to the story in my professional endeavors. But after that, I got into skiing. And so my first major thing when I was about 18 or 19, my parents kind of gave me the green light as a free pass to not go to college for the first year and to pursue skiing as a profession. And I did go professional and picked up sponsors, was very active with traveling around the world. I learned various languages and speak a bit of French and German and just really traveled my face off. And then I got
What an incredible opportunity.
It was insane.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I never ended up going back to college because right after kind of a short-lived ski career, which was about 5 years, which is kind of long actually as far as they go, I got right into broadcasting for the very sport which I was competing in, which was on its way to becoming an Olympic sport. So I started announcing X Games sort of the first year. It was like a crazy, first, picture it this way. I'll put it this way. I'll give you just exactly what happened. I didn't qualify for finals in a ski event at Vail, which was the US Open. And the person who was announcing that is this guy, Chris Ernst. We call him Uncle E. And he let me announce with him that night. And I did a good enough job, and it just happened to be kind of a situation where Chris was trying to get out of his constant traveling and announcing. He was an older guy, had kids, wife, and marriage to support, and he was trying to change gears. And so my first kind of delve into the professional private market, happened with somebody just ushering me in as they were leaving into a position that was completely filled out and ready to go. And I announced and was in sports broadcasting, got picked up by NBC when I was about 23, announced the Olympics shortly after that, and ended up announcing 3 different Olympics, 15 years of X Games and do tours and all over the world, basically doing these events. And when I got out of that, I felt like I had a lot of wind at my back. I was like, okay, God, we got this thing dialed, and I'm pretty much whatever I am going to touch turns to gold at this point because of all the wonderful things that I've done. I proceeded to start, I think, 8 businesses after that, trying to kind of get into the market that wasn't just entertainment related, that didn't have so much travel. I wanted to have a family. I was married. We had our first kid. It was time to get a little more local in my professional endeavors. And Kelly, I couldn't get anything to work. I couldn't. I thought I learned very, very quickly that having a lot of self-confidence and belief in myself doesn't necessarily contribute to me being instantly successful in what I did that was different. It wasn't all momentum for me. I hit a wall coming out of that. And it was tough. It was probably
Oh,
tough too to watch for my wife to like watch me go from, you know, all my NBC Sports primetime Olympic coverage to like trying to start an archery company and fountains and like event and
yeah.
motivational speaking tours and all of it just being ashes, nothing working.
That has to have put you in such like, I can only imagine you just sitting alone some days going, "What the hell?" You know?
That's exactly right. I had one day where I remember so I was like, reading the books and doing the bull dance, like all the things that I thought needed to happen in order to internally like articulate the mission of what I was doing and set my
Yeah.
mind to it and go. And it still wasn't working. Nothing was happening. It wasn't moving. It was
Yeah.
breaking. Communication was breaking left and right with the different people I was involved in. I was spending money. I wasn't getting it back. It was tough. I had a day where I like leaned on both my hands on top of the desk from a standing position, hung my head between my arms, and just about like
Ugh.
it was so incredibly anxiety filled, stricken,
I
wrecked. It
yeah.
sucked. It was the worst. I felt like if I go much further, like I'm gonna have a nervous breakdown because I
Yeah.
you get your identity sometimes a little bit wound up in this stuff. At least I
Yeah.
did. Man, it's a multi-fronted war that you begin to fight with like life, identity, existence,
Yeah.
existential purpose, professional like provision for your family, everything. It was so much at once. I was very overwhelmed.
I'm so glad you said that out loud. That was really vulnerable, and I'm willing to bet you anything that so many people go through the same thing on different levels, different brands, different styles, but generally the same thing when you're breaking out and you're like, I've got these ideas and I want to start it, and just trying to figure out the validation and when it doesn't come fast and wondering, universe, what are you trying to tell me? You know?
Yeah. Oh man, that's exactly right. And you might not have known this when you're inviting me on, but even more in my vulnerability is, I'm a God-fearing man. I really believe like that there is a creator, that there is a purpose. And one really interesting thing that as I look back on that I start to realize is like whether wherever you're starting, wherever you're like, if you're thinking larger term in like a spiritual reality and existence,
Mm-hmm.
there's there's this idea of purpose and this idea of like calling. And I really began to understand that not everything is a self-made thing, at least in my experience. And let me tell you what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
I had this phenomenal 15-year career where I just sort of got off the plane in business class and strolled through. The car was waiting. I
Yeah.
had my gear. I checked into the hotel. I showed up to the meeting late. I was the talent. Nobody cared. It's like, hey, there.
Yeah.
He's going to go in and do his thing. We're kind of just building a show around the athletes and then whatever he wants to say about it. And it was really surreal to see how that door in my life was opened for me. I didn't
Yeah.
make that happen really. And then I
And
did
did
try
you
to
start to kind of assume that all the other doors would just fly open, I guess?
100%,
Yeah,
100%. All
yeah,
the ego that comes with that too. And like then the frustration and like the blow that you're not God's gift to business in the way that you
yeah,
thought you would everything else. It was a real moment where life or God or however you want to define it was teaching me about humility and about like what it looks like when a door opens and you walk through it and it feels like purpose, it feels like calling. And
yeah.
then I'll try to use I statements. When I tried to force a door open, it was kind of closed at that
Mhm.
point.
Yeah,
And especially when I was trying to just figure it all out with the momentum of my internal success in the past that I hadn't necessarily really earned. I contribute to it. I was
yeah.
phenomenal at it.
Oh,
It was
sure, yeah.
perfectly aligned with my talents, but there was something that I was learning in that time, which was really fascinating, which was humility, which has carried me so much further in the latter part of my career um, than the former, for sure.
So, how do you think that that shows up now with what you're doing now?
So, a really specific example of how I meet that sort of experience and how that shows up in my day to day is that right now at Rue, we're selling digital labor essentially. So AI employees that you can bring into your business. And
Yeah.
I'm running a sales team there, and these kids, they're all from India. They
Mm-hmm.
are about 20 something, between 20 and
Mm-hmm.
25. They're just starting out their careers. They're out of college. They're in technology. They've had maybe one or two sales jobs leading up to this. And it's the best thing in the world because I'm able to show up and teach them what I've learned. And it's packed with, I feel the words coming out of my mouth when I'm talking to these kids, because it's packed with actual real experience. I'm not just rattling off something to them that I've read in a book, because
Yeah.
I was down in the muddy ditches covered in crap and
Yeah.
shoveling and like
Yeah.
failing. And I know if I can save the kids a little bit from failing, and it's so funny because sales teams especially are infamous for being very competitive against one another, and we've been able to develop kind of in our multiple meetings a week a ground rule that we're gonna multiply our speed in terms of becoming better salespeople by
Mm-hmm.
constantly exchanging the fundamentals of what's making us successful in our outreach, and in order to bring people into Rue. But really there's a lot of life lessons there which I don't think I would have been outfitted or possibly able to speak to with any kind of genuine reality or genuine words had I not ate shit
Gone through
for
that. Yeah.
several years.
Yeah. So
You
there
know
was
what I mean?
purpose in it. Yeah.
There was purpose in it. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love what your podcast is about because, and what you said at the beginning, learning more from failure than we do from success. That's certainly been true in my life.
Yeah. 100%. I want to pivot for a minute, still playing on your background because you come from sports, you come from broadcast, you come from real estate. You didn't go to school. Well, heck, a lot of us at this point haven't gone to school for, but you weren't trained in SaaS or anything related to the product that you're selling now, or I think the sales of technology. So what assumptions about business, I'm kind of flipping this question, what assumption about this business did you not have, and how might that have helped you?
Mm.
Like, what did you go in kind of naive about, sort of said, fuck all, like I'm doing it this way, and discovered, hey, this actually is good, that I didn't listen to a certain, way to do things, or, abide by some prescriptive, rules or whatever, that you came in with your own set.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So in real estate, I didn't come in with any training. The only thing that I really had was an attitude of like, we'll figure it out. And I've got one or two people around that I can ask a question if I get in a pinch.
Yeah.
That was kind of real estate. Is I didn't come in with the assumptions that I had any knowledge because I didn't have opportunity to even create those assumptions. That was real estate. And what I'm doing now, which I think is maybe a more interesting answer, is I've always spoken to people in whatever context, whether it was on the world stage, television style stuff, or I'm just a really outgoing guy for the most part in terms of experimenting with human psychology. What'll make somebody in the grocery store turn around and actually, smile instead of say, get your card out of here.
I love it.
So those kinds of things. But I didn't come into this sales position with a lot of expectations or a lot of us related to my ability to sell. I always knew that there was something to sales that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I was just hoping that what I had some experience with would contribute as soon as I discovered what sales actually is. And what I found out that it is, and what I've been teaching my team is, sales is not trying to convince someone to buy something. It's figuring out what somebody already wants and then helping them get it.
Yeah.
And to me, that made a lot of sense. And it was this open mindedness and not coming in with the assumptions about my capability of being charismatic or whatever in conversation with people that would positively contribute to the outcomes I would generate. It was that there's something that I need to learn. And then hopefully the natural talents which I've been given will help to polish that. And
Yeah.
that would be how I would answer that question. It's a good question, Kelly.
I like that. You're like, I'm open. I'm bringing what I have, and I trust myself. I trust people around me, and figure it out. And I think that's, I mean, what other choice do we have, honestly? I
No,
mean,
we've got another choice, Kelly. It's to go in for God's gifts to whatever market we're getting into. I don't recommend that approach. I think the other is slightly better.
right. Well, you're on the right track now for sure. Let's look at where you are now. So you've been there for a bit now. If you had to describe the company right now in one sentence in terms of what it feels like internally, what would it be?
Visionary.
Mm,
Yes, I would
it's
say
exciting.
visionary.
Okay, that's exciting. So you guys are all kind of at one time. You're building a product, you're stabilizing it, you're running a big in-house dev team. And I think you mentioned in our previous conversation, you're trying to really tighten up sales so that you reduce dependency on outside capital. Which of those currently is creating the most kind of operational tension day to day?
I would say that the biggest operational piece of tension is deploying a product in software and then being flexible enough with a large development team to respond quickly to what the market wants. You build something as a newer company, and you build it to the best of your ability that'll work. And then the
Yeah,
market responds, and being able to kind of flexibly integrate those needs into
yeah,
the vision and the actual execution is probably the biggest challenge right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
How so? I mean, yeah, you've so nailed it. Like, you can't be married to the first thing you put out there.
Mm-mm.
Listen without, and I'm sure there's some balance to create as well. You're getting feedback, but not all of it. It doesn't mean that all the feedback is good or right for your product. So trying to figure out, where that cuts off. But what is the most challenging thing about getting and incorporating that feedback?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the most challenging thing I would say is making sure that the feedback that you're asking the right questions really is probably one. I would say that there's probably three aspects of it. And that is whenever you have a customer who's using something, you have their personality that's coming into play, where some people, they might just want to give you the good news and they don't really like the idea of maybe it feels confrontational to report something that's not working well. And they
Yeah,
might sort of be that sort of personality. So making those identifications early on. And then you might have somebody who's got pissed off by something and they're taking it out on your product. And so you
yeah,
have to, like you said, you sort of parsing and filtering those products. What we try to do is we try to look at the general feedback that we're seeing, find the consistencies
mm,
in that are constructive in nature or maybe are related to semantically related to whatever that feedback is, whether it's good or bad. Let's say that everyone's like, okay, recently we have this very sophisticated integration where Sarah, our sales agent, an AI sales agent, is able to go out and prospect throughout the entire internet and run research on these different leads and then generate outreach and emails that are hyper personalized for those leads. And we get different levels of feedback where you don't want to, we need to look at it because we don't want to be so personalized to somebody based on their publicly available data that we feel creepy at all.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So we're kind of, there's certain types of information that you're listening for. Like, is our search and kind of our profile generation on these individuals enough? Is it too much? And so
yeah,
there's things we're listening for. And then there's the one where like somebody will say, hey, like I ran out of tokens in the middle of this campaign. What's the deal on that? And then that's an easy one. We're like, oh, well, we'll just give you more tokens. Like, and fix the problem so that doesn't happen again. And then the development team is like, well, that's actually way upstream. We had this configuration in place where it would limit the amount of tokens if you went down this path. And so there's a variety of different sort of inputs for that feedback.
yeah.
And parsing those and finding consistencies, I would say, is a long-winded way of sort of answering that question. But it's tough. It's
Yeah.
not easy. Sometimes
Yeah.
developers will be like, what I built is actually really freaking cool. You're just using it wrong. It's like, yeah, while that's probably true, this is
Hmm.
how the market is wanting to use it. And so how can we find a happy medium? And then it's like, okay, are the developers happy? Because this is really a masterpiece that they've created. In some ways they're right. But the user's the one who's got to generate value if we're going to run a
Yeah.
legitimate business.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, they're the ones that buying it, so it's, if they're saying it, there's validity to it, so but yeah, each case has to be considered, uniquely and individually, and then you've gotta, weave together any of the patterns and things that don't meet a pattern, put them to the side. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I want to bring up, I can't let this conversation go without giving you the chance to speak to this from our last conversation. You were really clear that you hate CRMs. And I thought it was funny. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit. I wanted to know from you a little bit more specifically, what do you think that CRMs were really built, originally like to solve? But where do you feel like they fall apart in practice?
Yeah, I can't stand CRMs. They drive me crazy. But at the same time, they're a very necessary fix right now. They remind me of a great big dirty bandage, like banded band-aid.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me, I can't.
Yeah.
You have these sales teams that are going out and they're trying to reach the market and they're talking to tons of different people. And we lack kind of the capacity with contemporary, like human intelligence to be able to store the level of information required to be efficient during those outreaches and to
Right.
pass those leads down the sales funnel. And CRMs are mankind's response to that problem.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, if you're a company, a software company who's built a CRM system, the second they're a perfect example of what scope creep looks like when you absolutely blast it out of a paint gun all over the walls of entire city. Like that's that's essentially what they've done is like, okay, well, let's build this for a sales company that's going after X number of leads. And then they start to develop the edge cases.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Tack
what
them all
if,
on.
yeah, what if? And they continue to ask themselves and they begin bolting on this real estate of code and tech infrastructure and bolting it on to the existing mothership so that if you look at something like Salesforce, like if that was an actual
Yeah.
piece of matter and it wasn't just an abstraction or a computer program, how big of a spaceship? I think it would be like the size of Earth and just out there, and it wouldn't be pretty either. It would be
No,
this
an abomination.
Starship Enterprise with like 30 different, like built on, jacked together, massive cities connected. It's just like, it's a junction. It's legacy brownfield old code, and a lot of it's crap. And in order to just go on to a CRM and activate, like, just enter a lead, it's a significant thing. And the reason that I feel totally fine about ripping on CRMs is number one, because they suck. They're supposed to be efficient, but they're one of the most inefficient things. And it takes a whole team of specialized users to actually operate them most of the time.
Yeah.
And we're at the point where they're going away. Like we won't be having this same conversation in a few years because the capacity for artificial intelligence to utilize compute, RAG integrations, and various impending storage capabilities to be able to quickly generate leads, number one, which is
Yeah.
basically generate leads, look at the actual conversation that's been had by salespeople with those leads, measure buyer intent, measure certain signals, also in the news related to that exact company, and start to track progress toward a close, toward a conversion, it's going to look so different. So CRMs, in my
Yeah.
opinion, are the temporary Band-Aid that mankind has been using since, the 90s in order to track these sales. But I don't feel bad hating them because of how clunky, massive they are
Yeah.
and how difficult it is to really use it. But they're the best thing we've come up with. So
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
mean, maybe it evolves to where, yeah, it's you almost like create your own as you go. It turns into some kind of organic self-building thing where you're like, okay, I want to start with this. And then you branch out and you're like, oh, my business is running now. I want to be able to like take this content and feed it into my, marketing. And then that little thing gets tacked on, but it's you never have more than you need. That would be cool.
right.
Yeah. What is it?
That's the idea.
Yeah, that would be so much. That would be beautiful instead of like all these empty rooms and spaces that, it's just overblown. What do you think should never, ever be automated because it would change the quality of a relationship?
Face-to-face interaction where two humans are generating rapport. So
Mm-hmm.
so no matter how now this is a really interesting question because in the current landscape of technology, there is potential right now for a company to essentially automate the interaction between a customer who's experiencing a qualified pain point that the organization solves and the roadmap to that solution. But that doesn't, just because we can do that, does not mean that we should or that it's good. And
Yeah.
I think that, and I've talked to my customers about this all the time. It's like we have a number of automations that we can build. We have AI employees that can do real work for your company. What their job is to do all of the stuff that sits around the concentric circle within
Mm-hmm.
which you and I are having a conversation and making sure that I trust you and you trust me, or more importantly, that you trust me because you're going to be paying me to do something I'm telling you I can do. And at some
Yeah.
point, we need to have that. And there should be rapport. There should be a relationship there, unless someone is completely disinterested in the existence of a relationship in a very transactional
Very
sort of
transactional. Yeah.
situation. Whereas, and those exist and those will be automated and that'll look different. And I think that probably contributes to a lot of people's outlook towards artificial intelligence, not necessarily always being a good thing because there's a lot of different that's coming. But human to human interaction will always have something that artificial and synthetic intelligence can't really offer. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. My opinion as a response is that when you and I are talking, I can ask you a real question about your experience and your past, and you can ask me about the same thing. And
Yeah.
those are real things. As long
Yeah.
as you're telling me the truth, there's no synthetic intelligence which can manipulate,
Can't replace that.
create.
Yeah.
Right. You can't replace it. It's just not something we can multiply. It's real.
Yeah. Let's transition a little bit over into the inner workings operations of Ruh as a startup. You're moving really fast. And interestingly, you're in the business of effectively automation. But have your team, tried to automate things internally for your own selves before you really understood your own process? Have you ever ended up doing something like that?
Automating something internally before we really understood our own process.
Yeah.
I would say yes. And I can speak personally. So Ru's interesting. Ru is the productization of a service company that was started
Hmm.
in about 2018,
Okay.
where you have like an IT solutions software creation, custom software development company that starts in blockchain, smart contracts, is one of the largest blockchain developers, like infrastructure developers for things like Ethereum and in the world. And
Yeah.
then AI comes out, they start to see the changes and project sort of the visionary future of artificial intelligence and say, hey, we got to build a platform that can build people AI employees for their companies. So that's how that thing sort of came through and that whole wrecking ball. I would say that like my CEO would probably have a laundry list of responses and very specific instances where he's automated things before completely understanding what that process looked like. And because
Yeah.
I know he's created a ton of automations, he's making them on the daily. Now that Claude Cowork is out, it's like you can just set these things to work on so much. One of the things that I automated that turned out to not necessarily be a useful workaround was I used I used VS Code along with my team to kind of vibe code a solution to search my emails, get my note taker transcripts, send those to Gemini, and have Gemini give me all of like the next steps and just sort of keep context on those conversations so that I could go
Mm-hmm.
in to any customer's thread and ask for something related to that. Like, hey, build me a really quick deck or a one page, which demonstrates how we're going to work together. And then I
Okay.
could send that out. So I automated that, but I didn't understand that instead of creating a custom tool is I could have just sort of leveraged what's already there by using something like Bubbles, which
Mm-hmm.
is their sole focus is deploying a note taker, creating those summaries, making those really easy to get to, the transcripts, the videos, everything, and having that as kind of a database of all your interactions with people. And then from that, you can take a you can take a what I didn't really realize is that having a thread in Gemini for every single one of my customers was not exactly something that was going to help me. It actually just made me have like a thread list or a list of chats that was like a mile and a half long. So
Jeez.
that's maybe not the most interesting example of what I've automated that hasn't necessarily been super helpful, but whenever we do something like that, whenever we like create an automation, like we did one that it was a blog writing tool that basically
Mm-hmm.
helped SEO. So you could just deploy a few agents. This agentic system would go out, do the research, write the blog, post the blog. And it was great, but at the same time, it was just kind of, I don't know, AI, what do they call it? AI trash, AI slop that was just sort of thrown out there into the ether in order to
Yeah.
create a SEO books. You know, we improved it. It started writing good blogs, but at the same time, it was something we inevitably kind of just abandoned in the forward trajectory of activity.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, hats off to you. You got to try, and
Yeah,
sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you try it. And then you're like, oh, wait, this doesn't work but you couldn't come to that conclusion out of, thin air. You need to lay
totally.
something down to see it.
Story of my
Well,
life.
let's look at wrapping up. I know we're coming up on time. I want to ask you a couple of things. Like 12 months from now, a year from now, what is one operational problem, or not even problem necessarily, but just thing that's hard right now that you hope is no longer consuming your mental energy?
That's a great question. And you mean related to Rue, to the work that I'm doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Uh, I would say that we have this vision. You asked me what the corporate vision, the corporate word which best describes it, and I said it was visionary. And between Jesse Anglin and Prasan Day, the two of them working together as visionary and manager, it's absolutely extraordinary to see the framework of the architectural plans that we have. And one of those is that you can come on to Rue and you can essentially talk about the employee that you need in your business, whether
Mhm.
it's an HR employee, a finance employee, somebody doing marketing or sales, and the orchestration engine will kick into gear and the workflow generator will begin producing that agent, which is testable almost immediately. And
Mhm.
the angst and excitement and knots in my stomach and historically as an entrepreneur
Mhm.
and seeing that same vision that I've had for creative business opportunities in existence in like my younger peers in the world and a generation lower than me, for them to
Mhm.
be able to have that experience and begin deploying their ideas out into the world is a really hard thing to wait for. And so while
Yeah.
it's not totally a pain point, it's something that I just desperate desire to see as a reality in the world and people working on it and using it in
Yeah.
order to make their like if I would have had something like that and maybe a slightly better attitude coming out of broadcasting, I think that I would have certainly gotten so much more traction in the market than I did. It was just so hard to get started. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
get everything going, to get your first little bit of traction, your first break, and to be able to offer something like that to people, that's the thing that I really, really want to see. And I don't think it'll take a year and a half or a year even. I think we're very close, and boy, I'm excited to see it.
That's cool. I can't wait to see that. Luke, I can't thank you enough. Seriously, a huge thank you to you for walking us through the pain, the sweat, the soul of and the curiosity and the grit that has gone behind not only you, but it sounds like, your team as well. Even, your CEO out there still hands-on and tinkering and testing and just trying to figure things out and keep coming up with new ideas. And this is the kind of stuff that doesn't show up on a pitch deck or a shiny website. So I think this is really, really valuable. So again, thank you so much. Where can people follow what you're building? Obviously, you have your website, Ruh.ai. Do you have any upcoming events? Are you on LinkedIn actively? Where else can we see you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm in the midst of an initiative to become more active on LinkedIn. And so I
Okay.
think that's probably a great place to connect with people. And like, if my story or where I've sort of been and all of this resonates with anyone, I'd love to, have a conversation with somebody, and I'll try to get back to you all the time on LinkedIn if I can. And it's just, there's a lot of pain in the growth, obviously, but it's a sweet feeling when you begin to stabilize a little bit and see the vision becoming a reality in your life. There's a lot to celebrate there.
We will definitely look for you there. Well, until next time, we will be signing off. Thank you so much.